effing mind. So joining me now, a member of the Select Committee, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He's also the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. Representative Schiff, we're so happy you're here. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
So John Eastman is the conservative lawyer who tried to pressure Pence to overturn the election. As you know, will you be able to prove that Trump was behind this campaign?
Well, I think we certainly are presenting evidence that the president was the architect of this whole plot to overturn the election with its different elements, elements that included, all the litigation, the big lie that drove it all, a pressure campaign on state and local officials, and as you'll see later this week, the pressure campaign on the vice president. He was obviously part and parcel of that, issuing his own tweets to pressure the vice president, going out to the mall to pressure the vice president. So the evidence, much of it already in the public eye, is powerful, and there's more that the public will see this week.
So Thursday's hearing, it was going to be a hearing on Wednesday, but now there's one on Thursday, and then there'll be others next week. We'll discuss that. But Thursday's hearing will focus on Mike Pence. Why didn't the committee ask Pence himself to testify, or is his chief of staff, Mark Short, who was the former vice president, on January 6th?
I'm not at liberty to talk about which witnesses will be testifying. But, I can say that in some cases, we've gotten the information we need from people in the room. It may not be the principals. But at the same time, we're not excluding the idea of bringing in some of the top people. So whether they testify this week or not doesn't exclude the possibility that we bring in other witnesses later.
All right. So other members of the Select Committee have been all over the place on whether you plan to make criminal referrals to the DOJ. You have said that you feel there's credible evidence of criminal activity committed by Trump. So why wouldn't you do something about that if you indeed believe that?
Well, as a committee, we may. I think the point is that we're going to conclude the hearings. We'll have a discussion about the evidence. Whether to make a referral, if we do make a referral, what that referral will be. To be honest with you, I think there's been much ado about nothing in terms of disagreements within the committee. We really haven't had a chance to talk it through. So I wouldn't characterize it as disagreements. I would characterize it as we haven't had that discussion yet, but we will in its proper time. And then we'll decide whether to make referrals and what those referrals would look like if we do.
So you haven't discussed this in all your time about criminal referrals?
I think that individual members have talked to other members about it. But, we've had our focus primarily on doing the investigation. And then, of course, lately on presenting the evidence during the hearings. So we're taking it, one step after another. And I think it was premature before we, really had done much of the investigation, let alone concluded it, to be talking about what we would want to refer to the Justice Department. The exceptions, of course, are when people were in criminal contempt of Congress. There, it was patently obvious that we would refer them, and it was just a question of which ones to refer and when. But the broader question, we'll get to it at its appropriate time.
So then what is the end game here? If you prove Trump or his allies broke the law, but there is no criminal referral, what is the point of this whole investigation? Is it just about setting the record straight?
No, there are two different missions here. There's our mission, and then there's the mission of the Justice Department. Our mission is not a criminal prosecution. We don't have that authority. Our mission is to expose the facts to the public light about a plot to overturn a presidential election, the first non-peaceful transfer of power we've had in our history, and prescribe remedies, legislative remedies, to protect our country going forward. That's our principal mission. The principal mission of the Justice Department is to bring people to justice who break the law. Now, we can make a referral, but of course, the Justice Department doesn't sit around waiting for referrals from us. At least they haven't in the past. I hope they're not simply waiting for us now. It's their duty to follow the evidence, and if there are credible allegations of crime, to pursue them against anyone, including former presidents. But our mission is quite different. That's not to say, again, that we won't make a referral. We may very well do so, but I would hate to give the public the impression that somehow that's necessary for the Justice Department to do its work, or they're waiting for us. They shouldn't be waiting, and if they are, I don't understand why they're departing from what the Justice Department generally does.
Okay, so then if you said if they shouldn't be waiting, do you find at least in what you know, enough credible evidence for the Justice Department to act at this moment?
I certainly believe there's enough evidence for them to open investigations of several people. And so does Judge David Carter in California, who believes that the former president and others were engaged in likely multiple criminal acts. And so if the Justice Department concurs with Judge Carter, let alone my own view, or others, they should be pursuing that. And so, yes, I think there is sufficient evidence to open an investigation. And, it would be up to the Justice Department ultimately to decide, does that evidence rise to proof beyond a reasonable doubt such that they're comfortable indicting someone? But there's certainly, in my view, enough evidence to open investigations.
As the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, I've got to get your take on President Biden's trip to Saudi Arabia in July after promising to turn the country into the pariah of the Middle East. We're also told that he's going to meet with the man intelligence officials say is responsible for the brutal murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Is this a mistake?
I think it is. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't shake his hand. I want nothing to do with him. And I understand, the president has to deal with a whole variety of difficult issues, but I wouldn't go. This is someone who, was involved in the premeditated murder and dismemberment of a U.S. resident, a journalist, who has a terrible human rights record. And it just goes to show you how, the need for fossil fuels so distorts our foreign policy and causes us to act in ways not consistent with our values. And, yet another argument on top of, the fact that we're destroying the planet for weaning ourselves off of foreign oil, but off of fossil fuels altogether.
Representative Schiff, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you, sir.